What's going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here with Howard Bender. Welcome back into the Fantasy Alarm NFL DFS podcast and live stream week 2 preview. Howard, we had a pretty good week 1, I'd say.
I would definitely say that we had a pretty good week 1. I do the full breakdown of what the playbook does in the watch list, in the following week's watch list. And I mean, we hit 7 out of 7 on our QBs. We had the top scoring running backs in there. We had a number of the wide receivers who were top performers. Believe it or not, John, my one shortcoming last week, if you looked at the breakdown, actually was the tight ends.
Yeah.
The tight end whisperers sucked at the tight ends last week. I mean, I had Kelsey in there, which was
well, the only tight end that really did good, though, unless he played like OJ Howard, right? There weren't many high scoring tight ends there in week 1, but yeah, you can go and look at the watch list. We have the optimal playbook lineup in there. I think the average scoring for the quarterbacks in the playbooks was over 20 fantasy points. Same with the running backs, around over 20 fantasy points. So yeah, a lot of good things happening. We have a shorter main slate here in week 2. They have 2 Monday Night Football games for whatever reason. And then, of course, we're dealing with the Sunday Night Football game, and we had Thursday's night game last night between the Chargers and Chiefs. The bigger issue I have with that is a lot of the good, talented players are on these slates on prime time. So if you're looking at the player pool today, Howard, and I did a little bit of looking, obviously doing the quarterback coach, you've been doing the watch list all week. Some of the usual names that we like to gravitate to, I don't find, they're not on this slate. So roster building, maybe a little bit different across the industry this week. Kind of excited to jump into it. So how about we get going looking at quarterbacks, Howard?
Let's do it, man. Absolutely. No Aaron Rodgers, no Kirk Cousins, no Jalen Hurts, no Josh Allen on the board. And obviously, again, no Justin Herbert and no Pat Mahomes. So Kyler Murray standing out above and beyond the others. I mean, obviously, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson are probably the top 2 guys there, the top priced guys.
Yeah.
But from there, then there's like when you move down the list, and if we're looking at DraftKings right now, obviously Dak is out. I don't even know why his name is in here. You might as well just
it's because they released the pricing like 3 weeks ago, right?
Still, you can take that name out, right? I mean, that's just going to cause.
Same with sitting there at 5,900. He's been suspended. He's suspended for like 13 weeks. So why is Deshaun Watson higher than Carson Wentz? He's not going to play a snap. So
I don't know, but Murray and Jackson are your top 2 tier guys. But listen, I think Russell Wilson at home against Houston is a nice one there.
Highest roster player, I think, at the position this week.
Wilson? Yeah, probably.
Matchup, home debut. People are going to buy into the bounce back after last week. Hackett knowing he messed up, like with the way his play calling went, like I think they're going to let Wilson go. He's cheaper than Jackson. Miami's got a good defense. Kyler obviously missing a lot of his pass catchers. Just before we went on stream here, Rondale Moore ruled out. Indy Isabella both ruled out. So 2 pass catching options. More important than Isabella, but both of those guys out for Arizona now. So I think Russell Wilson at 72, people will take a couple $100 savings and they'll go right there.
I think they should. I really do. Denver 7-1-2 against the spread in their last opening home games. In like their first home game of the season for the last 10 years. 7-1-2 against the spread. And then the winning percentage, it's either cover the spread or win outright in, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 68% of the time over the last 30 years. Teams just don't play well in the altitude.
Yeah, that's a former wager alarm stat. You and Craig Mish out there on your Broncos homes in September matchups. It was a must go to.
Right, but I mean, when you look at it, right, and you see that it's a 10-point spread, right, you have to figure, okay, if let's say they win and they cover, or even at worst, it's a push. It's still a 10-point lead, which means that Denver's going to put up some points.
Yep. Yeah, I'm in full agreement with you. Matt Ryan had a good passing day. Obviously, they tied with the Colts, so it's not as if they got blown out, but Ryan had a really good passing game. Michael Pittman had a monster day, so now you're looking at Sutton, Judy, and Russell Wilson here kind of probably PO'd about the way that week 1 went. I think they come out here in front of the home crowd and light the show up. So that's where I'm going with Wilson here at 7,200. I think he's going to be the highest rostered play in that mid-tier range. What are you targeting?
The mid-tier range is kind of weird. I actually don't hate Stafford. I know that he's dealing with that partially torn UCL, but we get this all the time, right? I wasn't worried about Stafford's elbow in the beginning of the season, right? I figured somewhere around like week 6, week 7, that's when we're going to start to hear that his elbow's barking and he's going to have some problems there. I don't love Atlanta's defense, their pass defense, by any stretch of the imagination. We watched Jameis Winston carve them up late, and it took them a little while to kind of get going there with the Saints. But so I don't mind this matchup here. Again, you look at people overreacting, and I'm sure that a majority of the public is going to be on. Well, I don't know if the majority of the public is going to be on Atlanta taking those points. They might just turn to that. No Super Bowl team has ever started out 0-2 the following year. So Stafford's probably a guy who I dig. I'm going to look at Derek Carr also. Right? I mean, granted, it was Mahomes last week, but I really don't hate Derek Carr as a nice option here.
No, I agree with you. Mahomes threw 5 touchdown passes. Derek Carr targeted Davante Adams 17 times in week 1. I think we all knew that was likely to happen, but you are going up against an Arizona defense. At least last week was missing some of the guys in their secondary and on their defense. So you could see Derek Carr at home here again, come out firing against a bad Cardinals defense. The Stafford thing is interesting because, again, I think people want to believe in bounce backs off these teams' losses, much like Denver. There's a lot of talk like they're going to make sure that Allen Robinson gets involved here and they're going to work him in, and they still have Cooper Kupp. They're at home. Atlanta, we don't think it's a very good defense, so I could see Stafford at 6,300 drawing a lot of rostership there as well. Yeah, and a lot of times when we talk quarterbacks, we have to think about the receivers because you're going to play a stack. So if you're playing Russell Wilson, Judy and Sutton are relatively reasonably priced. If you're playing Stafford, now you're paying top dollar for Cooper Kupp. If you're playing Derek Carr, you're paying top dollar for Davante Adams. So some of that roster construction comes into play a little bit as well, but I do like both of those guys there. But so Stafford and Carr, I like. Brady's probably a contrarian play given the pass catching situation there. And then we get under 6K quick. Carson Wentz on the road against Detroit. We saw how bad Detroit's defense was.
It'd be very popular, right? Yeah. Very popular.
Yep, I agree with you. At $5,800, a high game total here. Coming off 4 touchdowns. Everybody loves Curtis Samuel this week. I mean, you're not playing Curtis Samuel most likely if you're not throwing some Wentz stacks in there. So you got $5,700 for Wentz. And then after that, I don't know. I don't know where you like. Do you like Matt Ryan? Do you play Jameis Winston here against Tampa Bay? What are your thoughts on the value at quarterback?
So, believe it or not, I'm actually kind of looking at Trey Lance.
Okay.
I mean, so here's the thing. You want to talk about the fact that, whatever, it was a monsoon in Chicago and the field was soaking wet, whatever, and then they lost Elijah Mitchell and it changes the game plan and everything like that. I think coming into this week, I think we're going to see a lot of Deebo Samuel, right? We're going to see Deebo in the backfield, right? They're not going to just open up their arms and say, yes, Jeff Wilson, you're our guy, come to us, right? I think they're going to – this is where it came into play that they got that contract with Deebo and they gave him some incentive clauses in order to ensure that he would be a part of this ground game. And I think this week is a perfect example of that. So I think that's going to take away targets from Deebo and increase the targets to Ayuk, right? George Kittle's not going to play, or he's probably not supposed to play.
Yeah.
So they don't really have. So it's going to be like I think it's going to be a lot of short passing with Ayuk being like the mid to long passing kind of work that they're going to do.
Yeah.
And I just think it's going to be like short, high percentage passing to help move the chains. You're going to just rack up some yardage there for Trey Lance. He's going to get some running in there as well. I mean, let's not forget also Seattle's defense. They just lost Jamal Adams for the entire season. Right. So that's a big gaping hole in the middle of that secondary. And they lost Bobby Wagner, the heart and soul of their defense at the linebacker position. So I kind of feel like that second level of the Seattle defense is extremely vulnerable. And so Lance is a guy who I don't think a lot of people are going to be on that I got some interest in.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jamal Adams being out for Seattle. He's really good against the run as well. So when they run these RPOs and these read options, Adams comes up and he was a big hitter. It's what he got hurt on. So there's definitely something to pay attention to. And I do agree. This could be a spot where look at what like Jalen Hurts did last week, where he only completed like 55% of his passes, only for like 230 yards, but he had 90 yards rushing or whatever it was in a touchdown, right? And Lance is very much capable of putting up similar production to that. So especially against Seattle, I'm in agreement with you there. Anybody else? Do you take a shot? I mentioned Ryan, Winston. Any value? Do you like Davis Mills, Daniel Jones against Carolina? Are you taking shots on any of these guys?
I mean, it's really not pretty. Daniel Jones might be intriguing, right? Especially, I mean, his completion rate was solid, right? He got some. I think if Kadarius Toney is healthy and plays, I think he definitely adds an element that they were lacking in that first game. And then the dump offs to Saquon Barkley. I think everybody's looking at Saquon Barkley being like, this dude's back, right? Yeah. I mean, he's the Barkley of old. He's the Barkley that they drafted. So right. I think those dump offs will help Daniel Jones if you're paying down like that far down.
Can I interest you in a Daniel Jones, Sterling Shepard, Saquon Barkley stack against the Carolina Panthers?
Just thinking that, right? Yeah, off of your article.
$5,100 Daniel Jones. He got you 18 fantasy points last week. That's certainly doable. Certainly doable. So that's a quarterback position. Again, you get the full playbook when Howard writes it up on Saturday. We'll see where he lands and who's in it, but that's our QB breakdown. Running back. Again, we have some of the top guys here. Last week, 2 of the 3 top guys didn't really come through for us. Right, Jonathan Taylor, home run. Nobody played Jonathan Taylor last week. I entered the 3 max. I had him in one of my 3 lineups. 8% rostered was Jonathan Taylor. He went for 30-plus fantasy points. Now he gets Jacksonville. I think what we saw, what Antonio Gibson did against Jacksonville last week. Taylor, obviously, will be interesting to see the rostership on him. Again, $9,900 on DraftKings. Christian McCaffrey scored a touchdown, so he wasn't a total bust. His biggest play, unfortunately, came on a fumble recovery where he didn't count for any of the yardage that he gained. Baker mumbled the snap, and CMC picked it up and ran for like 25 yards, and you don't get any of that production. I think there's still a good bounce back opportunity for him. He is Christian McCaffrey, and maybe because he kind of burned people, won't be on. Less people will be rostering him at 8,900. Kamara's hurt. The ribs apparently are potentially an issue at 74. Everybody's playing Saquon at 73. Everybody played him last week at 63. So that's kind of my top tier here.
It's a good, solid outline of the top tier. Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad that Kamara's ribs are a little messed up because that'll help keep me off of him so I don't have to deal with the Taysom Hill nonsense either, right?
Oh, man. How frustrating.
That was so gross. So gross.
Yeah.
I dig Mixon against Dallas. Obviously, I think Mixon is a guy who he didn't get into the end zone last week, and that might keep people off of him. But I still think that, especially with the fact that I think Dallas's defense is solid, right? They are still a decent defense. I think that they're going to try to take some shots downfield, connect with Jamar Chase, get a lead, and then just run the ball with Mixon, right? Yeah. Because Dallas's offense is atrocious now. I mean, the offensive line is banged up. Cooper Rush is the quarterback. So I Mixon in this spot as much as I like Nick Chubb against my Jets. I do.
How frustrating, though, Kareem Hunt scores 2 touchdowns last week.
Right, but that game turned into it wasn't so much like a track meet, but that game went back and forth a bunch, and Cleveland needed to catch up, didn't they? Right?
No, they were kind of tied up with it was close with the Panthers all game. Maybe they pulled ahead. I feel like it was the
Cleveland was up. Yeah, Carolina was the one who came back.
Yeah, they had the 6-yard touchdown to Robbie Anderson there. So
yeah. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong, and maybe I do need to lay off the Nick Chubb.
So, you say lay off Nick Chubb. He ran for 140 yards, right?
Is that it? Just that?
He just didn't score. Kareem Hunt had 2 of them. That's the annoying thing, right? But that's what Kareem Hunt does. He did it last year, too. He was scoring touchdowns, and Nick Chubb was doing all the work. So Nick Chubb only scores if he breaks a 30-yard run, it seems like. The rest of the time, they get in the red zone. I think they like the versatility of Kareem Hunt because he can run just as well as Chubb can, but they also use him in the passing game. So I like Chubb a lot. I don't know if many people will be going against him against the Jets, especially because you're thinking people around him. I think you're right with Joe Mixon. If you look at some of the game scripts last season where Cincinnati went out to these big leads, Joe Mixon had monster running games. They just ran him down because they didn't need to throw as much. And we talked about last week, Leonard Fournette ran all over this Dallas defense. So Mixon could certainly be there. Swift, if he says he's good to go based off his own comments and he returned to practice on Friday. Again, I think the running backs in this game are going to be quite interesting. Swift himself, 144 yards, 50-yard touchdown last week, only at $7,000. This tier in this range here is quite appealing. Javonte Williams at 65. I still like Leonard Fournette. There's a lot of good running back value, I think, this week. Last week, paying up for the wide receivers was the play, and spending down at running back was the play. I wonder where we go this week with the roster construction.
Right. Well, it's really interesting when you do look at the pay down here for the running backs. Taylor and McCaffrey are Taylor and McCaffrey, but when you come down here, you were talking about Fournette.
Yep.
Right? James Conner. Williams is going to be very interesting just because it was so much pass catching work last week, right? And is Denver going to need to do that? Is that a design for the offense, or was that Russell Wilson not being comfortable chucking the ball downfield? So I'm on the fence. I love Javonte, right?
Yeah.
I'm just on the fence as to whether or not he's going to be one of those. Like, I always like to, I have primary guys at each position, right? And I just don't know if I'm there with him for DFS in week 2 because of it.
Sure. My one thing is I worry that this could be a low point for him, right? Like 6,300 last 12 targets, got 20 fantasy points, 65 this week. I think he got all of those all that passing work because they were trailing in that game. Nobody really expected Denver's offense not to be ahead. If they go up against Houston, like we're expecting a 10-point spread, they're at home. Is he the guy that runs down that game, or is it going to be Melvin Gordon, right? And I think it was going to be Javonte. And if that's the case, he could get 15 carries here and run all over this Houston team and still get the passing work. At the very least, I at least love knowing that he is that third down guy for them. Like, we don't have to worry about Melvin Gordon anymore in the passing game. It is Javonte Williams the whole way. So maybe he makes an appearance in the Contrarian Corner video this week if we see what goes on there, because there are quite a few running backs.
I love that you love him so much now.
Yeah,
I do.
I mean, I was in on Antonio Gibson last week, right? And look what he did.
You
so, the big passing down work. Gets Detroit this week. 3 different Eagles running backs ran for a touchdown last week. Sanders, Scott, and Gainwell all ran for touchdowns. So Antonio Gibson at 6,200. I said it in the video. I said it to you in our chat. This is Antonio Gibson's opportunity to win his job back, right? Robinson, they tweeted out a photo of him today. He's working out. He's practicing on the side on his own. So Robinson's coming back. He's going to be ready to go in week 5. This is Gibson's showtime to be like, hey, I had 1,000 yards last year. I had 40 catches last year. I deserve to be the number 1 running back on this team still. After week 1, easy matchup against Jacksonville. He looked the part. Another easy matchup here against Detroit. I love me some Gibson again at 6,200.
Can't believe you bypassed Najee Harris so easily, right? You didn't even talk about him. Same price, ultimate contrarian play here.
He is. I do. The Patriots' run defense last week was actually pretty good. They shut down Edmonds and Mostert when it came to running the football. Maybe that's where some of their strength is going to be this year, is that stopping the running game. Najee's dealing with the foot problem. That worries me a little bit. Oh, I feel okay. I'll work through it. And then he gets cleated or an ankle twist or something like that in the scrum, and next he's off the field. So injury concern is a big part of me worrying about Najee Harris here.
I got you. All right, moving down further. I'm not really interested in Cordarrelle Patterson against the Rams. I'm not really that interested in Zeke against Dallas. Josh Jacobs needs to show me something a little bit more. Darrell Henderson, on the other hand, Here you go. I like Darrell Henderson a lot. We were talking about Stafford earlier and the stack, that potential to do it. I wouldn't mind stacking it with Darrell Henderson here going up against Atlanta. So I think that's a good spot there. And then I tell you what, man, DeForest Buckner, if DeForest Buckner is out this week, I don't even care if Shaq Leonard, a.k.a. Darius Leonard, is back. He's still banged up and he's still questionable for this week. But DeForest Buckner never misses time. If he's out, James Robinson becomes a very intriguing option for me.
Yeah, I won't argue with it. Again, we know that Indy has a tough D, and most people probably won't play Robinson because of that. I think the other thing that may play against the rostership of Robinson here is the idea that Jacksonville is going to be playing from behind. And I think more people will then look at ATN for that aspect of it. But I mean, Indy wasn't that impressive against Houston. Like, they really only had a 2-man show, and now Pittman's dealing with some of his own issues. If it's just Jonathan Taylor, then this is going to be kind of a slow, grind-em-out game. Then Robinson could still remain on the field because Jacksonville doesn't have to chase. So, and if they're missing 2 of their key defensive players, even more so. So, I'm in agreement with you. People love Travis Etienne, but like I said to you before, I worry about inconsistency of a guy when the coaches say he can do a lot of things, and then what did he go do? 4 carries, 4 targets. Yeah. Not what you're looking for out of a player in fantasy.
Drop touchdowns, too.
Well, Nobody said his hands are perfect.
Looking further down, J.K. Dobbins possibly making his debut this weekend. We're still kind of waiting on there. You got a split backfield in Breece Hall, Michael Carter. Same thing with Edmonds as far as him down there. But that's against Baltimore. It's not really a great matchup. I guess the real question is Jeff Wilson at 5,100. Is that your Dameon Pierce this week? Is that your pay down, or is there something lower that might interest you?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably Wilson. Wilson will probably be popular. A lot of people are going to go there. I still just worry about this offense. Like, Deebo Samuel ran for another touchdown. Trey Lance is an RPO guy that when they get in the red zone, you feel like he's someone that's going to be carrying the football. What is Wilson's touchdown potential? It feels very low. And in tournaments, you need either a boatload of yardage, you need Jeff Wilson to be involved in a passing game, or you need him to score touchdowns. Right, I don't know where he fits. I don't know where he fits.
Right, but is he a cash game play like Dameon Pierce was last week? I said last week, I was like, Dameon Pierce is a guy who I would use in cash because I think his ownership is going to be super high because he's incredibly cheap. Yeah. And everyone was in on him in the preseason, and everybody was like, oh, yeah, Lovie Smith just named him the starting running back. So,
but is that good chalk or bad chalk?
What's that?
But is that good chalk or bad chalk?
It actually turned out to be good chalk because his ownership percentage was high enough that the dud that he put up didn't affect you in cash games whatsoever.
Sure.
And if you looked at, I said specifically, I'm not looking at him for GPP. I don't see the upside with him there. I don't see that. But if using him in a cash game is going to enable me to get Jonathan Taylor in there,
sure,
right? And maybe a Cooper Kupp or a Jefferson or somebody like that. Well, not Jefferson. He's not on the slate, but a Cooper Kupp. Then all of a sudden it kind of changes the dynamic for cash game builds. From a GPP standpoint, no, I won't use Jeff Wilson at all. Not even close. I'll use Rex Burkhead before I use Jeff Wilson.
I was going to say, if we want to talk about some guys, some pass catchers here, I guess, Burkhead against Denver feels like a decent spot if we're expecting Houston having to be playing from behind here. I don't think we're going to get a 70-30 breakdown again of snaps because Lovie Smith said, well, we want to get Dameon Pierce involved a little bit more. Maybe the Denver run defense isn't that good. We saw Rashard Penny look pretty good running against them in week one. Maybe they just got blitzed. They weren't ready for Seattle, and that had a lot to do with it. But if Denver is a 10-point favorite and they are up double digits, it's going to be Rex Burkhead out there, and it's not going to be Dameon Pierce. Burkhead is $4,900. We mentioned Eno Benjamin last week. Again, a guy that finished with 9 fantasy points in PPR at 4,200. He had a handful of carries. He had three catches on 4 targets for 33 yards. He's the third down back there in Arizona. If we're really just kind of looking to dive down, that's somebody maybe to take a peek at there as well.
I have no interest in Benjamin.
Okay.
I just don't.
Yeah, listen, he's not sexy, but he's 4,200. He had almost 10 fantasy points last week, right? So it's also game flow dependent. Mahomes and Kansas City were up 20 on them. They had to throw. Third down back was out there. So, yep, that's
really... Abdullah is sexier than...
Well, so Abdullah is only intriguing if Brandon Bolden doesn't play. Bolden didn't practice, right? He's dealing with the hamstring. You got to love Josh McDaniels' guys, right? Brings over Brandon Bolden. He gets 2 catches and a touchdown. And Amir Abdullah, who is playing third down role all preseason, doesn't even get on the field most of the time. So I'm with you there. Again, we're still not at a point where there's a lot of great value, especially some of the matchups that some of these value guys have. So if you're going down deep, under 5K, it's probably Burkhead. Maybe you take a shot at Pierce. No Damian Williams this week, but I don't think we're playing Tyler Algier at all against the Rams.
Are you playing Tyler Algier?
I'm not.
Me neither.
I still think Mostert's somewhat interesting. I know that Edmonds was the lead back there in terms of snaps, and New England's run defense held pretty good, but I'm still a Mostert guy. I think that he'll have a GPP week in him. If you're playing 20 or so lineups, maybe you get 1 or 2 Mosterts in there as sort of contrarian spend down options, because the last 2 seasons that he's been healthy, he's had like the fastest plays, or he's at the fastest top end speed plays. He's running like 26 miles an hour, all those advanced metrics, these wild breakouts. So like it only takes 1 for Mostert there. So that's running back position though. Again, I think the middle tier is super interesting. Because of that, I don't think anybody's playing Jonathan Taylor again. So we'll see. If we spend down at quarterback, I may have to throw Taylor in a lineup and see where we go. Wide receivers. Top tier guys are all there. Cooper Kupp at 99. Davante Adams is at 86. Jamar Chase at 8K. Debo 78. Tyreek was okay at 71. I think the one interesting thing here, we talk about Chase and his matchup with Diggs. Diggs last year allowed the most yards at cornerback. He just, as good as he was intercepting the ball, he also was targeted a lot and he gave up a ton of big plays. So I wonder if people fade Chase because they're worried about that Diggs matchup and not necessarily a stopper there. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of when I put Chase into the watch list, it was exactly that. I think Trevon Diggs, he got the attention for all the interceptions and stuff like that, but he also definitely did get beat.
Yeah.
On a number of deep plays there as well. So
yeah, he cheats. He's looking for the interception, and
right, exactly.
And if he mistimes it, Chase is going 60 yards to the house. So that's definitely an intriguing spot there. Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams, sure. If you're playing Stafford or Carr, like they're in your lineups. If you can fit him as a one-off, of course, like figure it out. Just elite plays there. So any of those top guys I think are fine. Debo is super intriguing because of the rushing touchdown potential for him there. That's like your top group. Is there anybody that you would avoid in this top range?
Wide receiver wise to avoid? Well, I mean, obviously I'm not interested in CeeDee Lamb.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, not a Cooper Rush fan? Shocker.
Right, surprising. Again, I worry about Deontay. Well, no, I'm looking down in the top tier.
You can scroll down. I mean, listen, they're going on all the way down the list here. So
yeah, I mean, because look, Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams, I'm in on both of them.
Yeah.
Jamar Chase, happy to use him. Debo Samuel, I'm probably very happy to use him as well. Week against Baltimore, I don't hate that, right? I mean, who's going to cover him? Marlon Humphrey?
Yeah, they lost Fuller, right? Last week, Baltimore did, I think, right? So
yeah. So all of a sudden, it changes things up a little bit more there, and you can probably get one of these like high-end wide receivers into your lineup and do it that way. So I don't hate on any of these top-tier guys. I think you should probably shoot for one of them.
Yeah, I agree. 17 targets for Adams is just hard to fight there. So mid-tier range, McLaurin he had an okay day. He saved by the touchdown. He did have the 49-yard catch. He was the third best wide receiver on Washington in week 1. That won't happen too often. He gets Detroit here. Amon-Ra St. Brown, much to Andrew Cooper's dismay, 8 catches, 12 targets, and a score. He will
really. I didn't realize he was so anti Amon-Ra.
Oh yeah, he's a big anti Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he'll point out that very low ADOT here. But if they're going to pepper him with 12 targets, you kind of have to just change your take, right? His whole thing is his draft capital and the fact that last year he broke out when everybody else was hurt. But, in a shootout in week 1 against Philly, he got 12 targets and 8 catches. So 6,500, if you think that game's going to be played that way, kind of got to think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be one of the more highly targeted options from Mr. Jared Goff there.
I do expect it. I definitely do expect it. I think, listen, DJ Chark is the guy who can stretch the field and be that deep threat. We saw him do it, right? We saw him do it in Jacksonville. We saw him do it last week in week 1 here. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the guy who gets peppered with those targets, who helps move the chains, who does the across the middle work, the underneath routes, things like that. And he tries to get him running in space. I think for a full point PPR format, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a fantastic play. If you're looking for a deeper dive and somebody who's got that home run potential, then you switch to DJ Chark. Yeah. But with the way that the Detroit offense is set up, they saw what they had in Amon-Ra St. Brown last year, and I think that they want to continue to build on that. It's why when they drafted Jameson Williams is the deep threat guy. He's not he plays a different role than St. Brown does.
Yep, I agree with you. Reasons why I think Russell Wilson's going to be the chalk quarterback is that Cortland Sutton is $6,100 and Jerry Jeudy's $5,600. So pick one. I am obviously a big flag planter in Jerry Jeudy this year. I have him in 63% of my best balls, Howard. And many people think that is far too much exposure in one player. I say not if you believe in that player. And Jerry Jeudy had 23 fantasy points in week 1 at 5,600. Sutton, of course, still had a decent game, 11 points for him. Wasn't able to connect in any of the end zone throws, but 4 for 72 there. Again, this is just why I think that Wilson's going to be so popular, is that very easy to stack him with his receivers and then get in your Taylor or your Adams or whomever you want to spend up for and fit those into your play. So I think that's going to be a very popular play there. Michael Thomas coming off a 2-touchdown game in his return. That Saints offense did nothing in the first half, exploded in the second half. Tom 5 for 57 and 2 scores right there in that middle part of that group. So
this middle tier is fantastic, right? With that, I mean, you got Michael Thomas, DJ Moore, who didn't have a great game last week, but I mean, he's a 1,000-yard receiver who's got the upside of 5 or 6 touchdowns, right? So in a matchup against the Giants, I don't hate him at all. And then
only
Christian
his quarterback
Kirk
didn't suck.
What's that?
Only if his quarterback didn't suck.
Hey, his quarterback looked pretty good last week, man.
Baker Mayfield did not look very good last week.
I just love getting under.
He threw a 75-yard touchdown pass.
Dude, I listen. I made the mistake of going against you on Baker Mayfield for like 3 weeks last year, and then sat there and I watched it. And I immediately turned to you. I said, "You're right, John."
Yeah, he's not a good quarterback. Not a good quarterback. But I did bet his over passing yards last week, and thankfully that 75-yard touchdown helped get over there. So,
you're such a sucker.
I know. You know what? Listen, no biases in the betting game, right? As bad as he is a real life quarterback, I took the yardage. So anyway, so Thomas is there, more sure if you want to go in that direction. I don't know about Kirk in this spot, though. He did have 20 fantasy points there in his week 1 matchup against Washington. Bateman found the end zone for Baltimore, but Miami's got a really good defense. How chalky is this week's $5,500 chalk play Allen Robinson? After last week, it was Michael Pittman, right? I mean, Robinson at 55 here against Atlanta.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks they're just going to force him into the action.
It is, yeah. I mean, listen, if you think that this whole week for everybody is about finding the guys who shit the bed last week and you expect them, they're better players than that, and so you automatically expect them to do better in week 2, then I think Allen Robinson is definitely that guy. Would you look to Allen Robinson, or would you maybe, if Chris Godwin was out, say I'd rather go with Julio Jones at the same price?
Oh man, if Godwin is out, so the thing is, it all depends on Mike Evans for me. I still think Julio Jones is good, but if Mike Evans is also out, then Julio Jones becomes the top target in that offense, and I like it maybe a little bit more. I know that Allen Robinson is playing against Cooper Kupp, who's an absolute target hog himself, but I feel like because of the way he was used and they kind of, we talk about this a lot, the media sometimes does play an influence on how things happen. What happened with the Chargers game last night, right? Mike Williams got like the first 8 targets thrown to him, right? Because all week everybody said, well, what's wrong with Mike Williams? Why didn't they work Mike Williams into the play last week? Yeah, and then Mike Williams goes out and establishes himself. I feel like Allen Robinson's going to get more work because the coach had made a point to say, like, we're going to work in Allen Robinson more. Anytime a coach sort of says that, makes me kind of think that's where they're going to go. Gives you a great opportunity, I think, to pivot, right? Because I think a lot of people are going to look at Robinson in this matchup against Atlanta and be like, this is a spot where he's going to bounce back. So it's an interesting tier. If T. Higgins doesn't play, Tyler Boyd caught a touchdown last week. He's $5,400, right? So potential spot for him there. As much as I crapped on Robbie Anderson, it did take 75-yard touchdown for him to get 102 yards in a score. He did see 8 targets. So if you are buying into DJ Moore, why not take the boom play Robbie Anderson against your Giants and see if you can go downfield there? I don't think Jalen Ramsey is going to be as bad as he was in week 1, but Drake London looked really good in week 1 for Atlanta against the Saints, and he had a pretty tough matchup for him there against Lattimore.
They moved London around. Like, that's the thing. Jalen Ramsey doesn't shadow anymore.
True.
Right? So if you're going to continue to move your receivers around, and we saw them do that, right? We saw the Bills do that.
Yeah, he didn't follow Diggs across the line, and everybody was like, why is Ramsey stopping there, right? They just passed him off, and it didn't really matter. Ramsey got burned all game, no matter who was on him. But yeah, no, that's a good point. That's true. Ramsey doesn't follow anybody.
So yeah, so I don't mind Drake London if he's going to get that work. I already told you I like Brandon Ayuk, 5,100 here. I think he's going to be the guy, especially if Debo's going to do some more of that running back role that he did last year. I think Ayuk becomes an intriguing play, and then
Landry, Shepard, Samuel, all in that like 4K under range, right?
That whole range right there is looking super tasty, right? Samuel is 46, Shepard is at 49, Landry's at 5,000. That ain't too shabby. What do you think about Donovan Peoples-Jones with his 11 targets last week at 4,400?
Yeah, this is a guy that Coop has pointed out here a few times. I mean, 11 targets is hard to argue, right? The Browns' passing attack is just so unexciting to me. So probably not anybody that I'm going to have in my lineup, but I think he's a good pivot play, right? If you're We think Samuel is going to be the guy that a lot of people look to, and Jones was there for a couple $100 cheaper, then I could see that. I could see that happening, I guess. That's not the worst. I like Zay Jones here at 4,300. He had a good debut there for Jacksonville. Him and Kirk, they got paid the most money this offseason by Jacksonville, and then they went ahead and they had the most fantasy points there.
The only thing that makes me a little nervous here is that Indianapolis's strength on defense. I mean, their defense on the whole is rock solid, right? But if you're taking out DeForest Buckner and you're taking out Shaq Leonard, it becomes a little bit softer in the front seven. Their secondary is still really good. Stephon Gilmore, Kenny Moore is there. I can't remember who the third corner is that I'm blanking on, but
right.
So I like it. I like it for Jacksonville if they're going to be airing it out, but I do just have concern with the fact that Indy's secondary is as good as it is.
Yeah, maybe liking our Shepard play a little bit more here is the fact that Tony landed on the injury report as well with the hamstring. So more reasons why they keep Kadarius Toney off the field, give him some phantom injuries, and go from there. So Dotson, 2 touchdowns. Are you buying?
Dotson, 2 touchdowns. Am I buying it? I am buying it. However, I just think that, I mean, it's not going to be a regular occurrence.
No, I don't. But he was a hyped up.
Terry McLaurin is going to see a number of targets. Yeah,
Logan Thomas,
obviously. Well, yeah, I mean, but we'll have to see because they didn't shower the tight end with the targets like they did in last season. They didn't do that. Right. So the question is, beyond that, where are they looking? And sure. Is that a possibility there? So I think Dotson, I like him. But he is the number 3 receiver there and possibly could be the 4th guy on the target pecking order. Sure. So I like him, but I have some concerns.
Did you happen to see the report about Kendrick Bourne this week?
Somebody just asked me about Kendrick Bourne. What do you think?
So apparently Robert Kraft, while watching the game on Sunday, asked where Kendrick Bourne was, and he found out that Patricia was benching him because he was late to a team meeting, and Kraft said, no, you put him on the field. Bourne only saw 2 snaps in that game, but reports out of New England camp are moving forward. Kendrick Bourne expects to be a big part of the Patriots' passing offense. So I think that there's going to be... Yeah, so I think that's going to be, again, what is the Patriots' passing offense? That is to be determined, but the fact that Kendrick Bourne and Robert Kraft was like, what are we doing here? We don't have a lot of wide receiver talent as it is. Last season, Bourne was maybe our best receiver. Consistently, Jacoby Myers is fine, but Bourne was the more explosive playmaker. And Bourne gets in the game. You only saw 2 snaps. One of them went for a 41-yard catch. So, $4,000 dart throw maybe play on Kendrick Bourne this week. Robert Kraft is a man making decisions now in the Patriots organization, not necessarily a good thing if you're Matt Patricia.
It's not necessarily a good thing if you're anybody. If you're Matt Patricia, if you're Bill Belichick or anything like that. Right. Like, what kind of a mess have the Cowboys been in ever since when Jerry started dictating shit?
So that'll be it. So
Robert Kraft needs to stick to what he knows, right? Counting money and getting rub and tugs.
Right. And sitting next to Mike Tyson because that's who he was with in the owner's box during that game in Miami. I would have paid $1 billion to be a fly on the wall of a Mike Tyson, Robert Kraft football watch party, right? So
almost as exciting as it would have been to, who was it? It was last night. It was Roger Goodell sitting next to Jeff Bezos.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Except like those are 2 just like snooty guys, right? Like Mike Tyson, Robert Kraft, what could those 2 men have in common that they're sitting next to one another having a conversation? Outside of, I am sure Robert Kraft is probably investing in like Tyson's weed business that he started up. So that's probably what it has a lot to do with. But anyways, like I said, that was the story coming out of New England camp, is that Robert Kraft said, Kendrick Bourne needs to be on the field. There's no reason for him not to be on the field. We need receiver help. So we can kind of just put that in the back memory bank for you there and see what comes out of it there for week 1. Paris Campbell's 3,700 if Pittman doesn't play. Even if Pittman does play, maybe Paris Campbell at 3,700 is worth the target here.
I very much like that. I was also looking at for 3,200 Ashton Dulin.
Sure.
Because it is Jacksonville and Dulin's $500 cheaper than Campbell. So depending on your lineup construction, right? I mean, if you can, I would rather have Campbell in there than Dulin.
Yeah,
but
Pierce already ruled out too for this game, by the way. So they could be without Pierce and Pittman for this game. So
exactly. So I think that there's definitely some value to be had. Adam Ronis will be super excited. He's been Paris Campbell's #1 fan.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, he was. Yeah, I've talked to Justin Fensterman a lot. He says how much that Ronis is always yelling at him about Paris Campbell. So the other one there, Greg Dortch. Again, we mentioned him. Had a good game in week 1. Now, again, they were behind the majority of that game. 7 catches, though, 9 targets, 63 yards. He's the number 2 in that offense right now, right? It's Hollywood Brown, it's Greg Dortch with Rondale Moore and Isabella out, so he's 3,500. So there's some value wide receivers on the board to potentially take a look at there for your lineups. Tight end position, Mr. Bender. Mark Andrews is your top guy at $6,400. We don't know the Kittle status at 59. Waller's at 56. I don't think we're going to play Pitts at 54. Dalton Schultz with Cooper Rush is at 52. That's your 5K and above range.
I actually like Dalton Schultz. I really do. I think that the Bengals, their defensive line is solid. Their linebacking core is good, not great. I think that when you're looking at who Cooper Rush is going to latch onto, because he's going to have to pass. You can't just run the ball. And you can't sit there. I mean, you could throw 12 passes to Tony Pollard working out of the slot, right? Or out of the backfield, but you're going to have to pass the ball. You're going to have to make them respect the passing game in some fashion or another. So I actually think that of your Cooper Rush, where are you leaning, right? I mean, if CeeDee Lamb's going to see the tough coverage, who the hell knows what's up with the rest of their wide receiving core? Dalton Schultz all of a sudden becomes kind of a possibility here for me.
Yeah, I didn't mention Noah Brown, but Noah Brown got peppered with targets by Cooper Rush when he got in the game. You know, it was late, obviously, in the fourth quarter there, but all of a sudden, Noah Brown, Cooper Rush, what do we talk about all the time, right? These, like, second-string guys, they practice together all camp, like, they're not expected to be on the ones, and then all of a sudden, Gallup's out, Tolbert's inactive, and now Noah Brown's the wide receiver, too. Who's Noah Brown been catching footballs with all preseason? It's been Cooper Rush. So there's something maybe to potentially look there with Noah Brown at wide receiver as well. Brown is priced out at $3,800. Just another dart throw potential play there for you. But yeah, Dalton Schultz works. We talk all the time. Safety blankets for tight ends, for quarterbacks is the tight end there. So I don't hate it.
I also, by the way, I'm not going to rule out Darren Waller because I think that I don't think a lot of people are going to look to him, obviously, for all the targets that Davante Adams saw. But Arizona's vulnerable to the tight end. I mean, we saw how easily Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes connected on that first drive of the game in week 1, right? And it just boom.
So I wonder if I just wonder if that's a one-off thing, right? Like, because last year they were the number 1 team against tight ends. Isaiah Simmons was the tight end monster. This is what Andrew Cooper was talking about. And they only gave up more than 50 yards to a tight end one time last season. And then in week 1, Simmons gets cooked by Kelce all game. Is that a sign of just like a bad day, or was it just a bad matchup for them? So I agree with you. If all of a sudden Simmons is regressing in his 3rd year in the league and Arizona does struggle now against the tight end, that's something to pay attention to. You could be right. Maybe get on the train early before everybody else gets on the train, but I still mildly worry that maybe that was just an off game for them.
All right. We shall see. Beyond that, I mean, obviously, I'm not a Hawkinson guy.
I know. We talked about
I'm not. I can't. To me, you're paying too much for mediocrity.
Sure.
I don't mind.
You buy Freiermuth?
I bought his usage, but I think that's something that New England's going to focus on.
Could be.
I mean, are you in on Freiermuth?
A little bit. A little. He's generally good against tight ends, too, but, I mean, Devin McCourty's like 100 years old now. Right? Like, he used to be really good against tight ends. I think they lost Adrian Phillips, too, to an injury. And they got to worry more about, it feels like, Claypool and Deontay and Pickens and Najee Harris, that maybe Freiermuth just finds the soft middle of that defense. And Trubisky is not that guy that's Big Ben was looking to throw downfield. Maybe Freiermuth is an option. I would probably play Ertz over him. I'm not really a Higbee guy.
Me neither. No to Fant. Yeah. And I'll say this. Denver, vulnerable to the tight end. I identified that. I think I was talking about it on either Friday's Fantasy Alarm show or Sunday morning with Fensty. But I said that I was kind of looking at Noah Fant a little bit because I found that Denver did look vulnerable to the tight end. I don't necessarily know if that puts me on to
who?
OJ Howard, Brevin Jordan, the direction there, but I don't know. So I'm not into Fant here. Bray, we'll see. Njoku needs to see more targets before I can invest. I do like Albert O.
Yeah.
Should have had a touchdown.
They're throwing to all of their tight ends, which was annoying in that
yes,
game.
That's definitely in one. Evan Engram's in a good spot here against the Colts, especially if Buckner is out and Shaq Leonard needs to focus more on helping stuff the run.
Yeah.
I think that's a possibility
Tyler
there.
Conklin saw 7 targets. Scored a touchdown.
Tyler Conklin did see 7 targets.
Uzomah's hurt.
Yeah.
Game time decision with the hamstring.
Are you gonna Jets tight end me here?
I don't really want to. I would rather play Logan Thomas again. He played 67% of the snaps.
Yeah.
So he's working his way back. He was the guy that was playing 90% of the snaps when he was fully healthy. So it could be a spot where they ramp him up game 1. Maybe he sees 75, 80% game 2. 6 targets. I'm a big Logan Thomas guy. I don't think he's not going to be an under 4K tight end by the end of the year. So I kind of want to keep getting in while he's this cheap.
I'll tell you what, though. I think it kind of depends. I'm not saying that. All right, Scott Turner is used to dealing with tight ends well. He did it with Greg Olsen when he was working underneath, even when Norv Turner was the OC and Scott was working under him. So he does utilize that. But I mean, listen, I said it before, I'll say it again. I wish I loved anything as much as Scott Turner loves Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
So if you've got Terry McLaurin, now you've got a healthy Curtis Samuel, and you've got a young rookie in Jahan Dotson. Like, does that start to pull away the targets from the tight end? Because in reality, I mean, Washington hasn't had a number 2 receiver over their last 3 years, which is where we've seen the heavy targets go to Logan Thomas and the Washington tight ends.
Yeah, my only other reasoning for that is also like Carson Wentz, a lot of his success in Philly, right, was throwing to Ertz and Goddard. So like he might just have a comfortability with the routes the tight ends run in these offenses that he's a part of. So yeah, and we saw obviously Logan Thomas was a top 5 tight end in the second half of 2020. So when he really broke out, something to watch there. Goddard, I think, actually had a pretty good game last week against Detroit as well. He had tackled out like the 3. Almost got into the end zone. So something, again, 3,400. When we're down this cheap, you're just looking for guys that are going to be able to score. OJ Howard, he's had the 2 touchdowns. He ran six routes, I think Coop said. So he had 6 routes run, and 2 of them went for touchdowns. So what does that equal? I don't know. He's not in on it. I asked him immediately. He keeps on touting up Brevin Jordan. And I'm like, why does Houston keep bringing all these tight ends then? Right? Like, if they like Brevin Jordan so much, they brought Jordan Akins back to their practice squad. They signed OJ Howard, and they had the other guy there that does a lot of their blocking that Lovey said he loved using, as could play all downs or whatever it was. So Arthur Brown, right? Not Arthur Brown, but Brown is the other guy's name. Pharaoh Brown, right? He's Pharaoh Brown can play all snaps and catch football. If they like Brevin Jordan so much, why do they keep bringing in all these other guys? So, and we all once thought that OJ Howard was like going to be a legitimate pass catching tight end in this league. Jordan's not even practicing, right? He's dealing with an ankle injury that he suffered. So OJ Howard could be in for more snaps.
I'll throw that 3K dart.
Right? Like against
it's a team that I identified last week as being vulnerable to the tight end, and then gave up a shitload of targets and yards and a touchdown to the tight end.
Yep. So that's
multiple tight ends.
That's the last. That and Kylan Granson, I guess, would be the last tight end I'd throw out there. We mentioned last week Granson, if they're going to be without Pittman and Pierce, 7 targets for Kylan Granson last week. Only caught 3 of them for 22 yards, but a $2,600 dart throw against Jacksonville here for Kylan Granson. I don't mind it.
I don't hate it.
So
I don't hate it at all.
That's the last tight end for me. Anybody else for you?
No, I wasn't even going to look down at Granson anyway. So
I don't mind if you're looking to save salary. Defense is here. Do we have a go-to for this one? Everybody is going to play Cincinnati. I think they're $2,200.
Why wouldn't you?
Right,
at $2,200 against Cooper Rush.
Yep, I think that's where everybody's going to be going, spending down with the Bengals here. They are on the road, something to at least consider. Sometimes these teams on the road just don't play well. We all thought Philly's defense last week was going to be gangbusters, and then all of a sudden they go and get rocked by Detroit. So something to watch too, but I think everyone is going to be in on the Bengals at $2,200. Pittsburgh's defense at home again against New England. I know Watt's not there, but the rest of that defense still exists. Miami went all over Patriots last week. We were in on Miami. Now we're getting the Steelers at almost the same price we paid for Miami last week at $2,800. Kind of
like that too.
Mac Jones was getting smashed against Miami, so Patriots offense is so bad. So I do like Steelers D here as well, maybe as a pivot off of Cincinnati if you wanted to consider that option there. If we're spending up, do you have a spend up?
I mean, the Rams, obviously.
Yeah, Denver, I guess.
I'll even look at San Francisco at home with Geno Smith under center.
Sure.
Right. Denver's intriguing, obviously. If they can stifle the Texans, I don't mind that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the Bengals at 2,200 is like, come on.
All right, let's build our lineup. We'll lock in the Bengals at 22. We'll start it off.
I built the lineup while we were talking.
Oh, well, I love it. Well, give it to me then. Let's roll with it. Do you have the Bengals on?
I don't necessarily know if we're going to roll with it, but let's just take a look. Are you ready?
Yeah, all right. Well, I got the Bengals as our defense, but go ahead and tell me what you got.
Bengals are in on defense.
Yeah.
Let's do that Washington stack that you like so much.
What was my Washington stack?
Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Antonio Gibson.
Okay.
And then you throw me Curtis Samuel at 4,600.
Okay. Curtis Samuel. All right. So that gives us 6,200 a play. Are we spending up at running back? Or are we going mid-tier running back?
I kind of like that mid-tier, man. I love me some Joe Mixon. I'll tell you what. Plug this into the lineup so that everybody who's listening and watching can actually see it.
Okay.
And then we can just kind of play around and pick it apart from there.
All right.
So Wentz at quarterback, Joe Mixon and Antonio Gibson at running back, Davante Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Curtis Samuel at wide receiver.
Okay.
Bengals at the defense. And then this kind of gives us some intriguing things to play with at tight end and the flex position. In my lineup right now, I've just got Zach Ertz and Paris Campbell in there, but I still have 700 left over. So there's stuff that we can kind of maneuver around there. And so why don't we take a look at, who don't you like? Who would you prefer at some of the places that I've already plugged in already?
I think we can go down I kind of want to get Adams and Taylor in the lineup here.
Davante Adams and Jonathan Taylor?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we can
take out Mixon.
I think we can go up from Mixon. St. Brown at 45. And Ertz, I think we can go down on because we do like some 3K tight ends there, right? So would you go Albert O at 37? Would you go OJ Howard at 3K as a potential tight end option? Kylan Granson at 27?
If we're you just want to throw like a dart.
Yeah.
If you just want to punt and throw a dart, then go ahead and use those guys. I'm thinking about guys who I do feel will see ample targets and get some work. I almost prefer Albert O at 3,700 than I do going even further down.
Albert O at 37 gives us a $5,300 wide receiver. Ayuk's 51. You liked Ayuk?
I do love Ayuk. All right.
Shepard's 49. Shepard's 4,900. That's Carolina. Let's see. How do we get... I want to get Judy in this lineup. So how do we get Judy in this lineup?
Well, let's see. Get Judy into that lineup there and
Samuel
see.
Adams.
Let's take out Albert O. Because if we're going to get Judy in there at 56.
Well, what if we do Barkley instead of Taylor?
I don't want to go multiple Bengals. Wait.
Okay.
Stick with the plan here for a second,
all right,
John.
All right. Okay.
Wentz, Taylor, Gibson, Davante Adams, Jerry Jeudy, Curtis Samuel.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You know me. I like to have something coming back a little bit on the
right.
Yeah, but we're not going to be able to do that here with Detroit because the guys who are, unless we were to go Hawkinson at tight end.
Yeah, which
doesn't do shit for me.
Can't
but
really afford it. Well, let's see. If we go Ertz, there's not going to be a 2,600 flex unless we don't.
No, what you're going to need to do is we're going to need to throw that dart at OJ Howard at 3K.
So let me ask you. We could go double tight end. We can go Zach Ertz. Lineup right now: Carson Wentz, Antonio Gibson, Jonathan Taylor, Curtis Samuel, Davante Adams, Jerry Jeudy, Zach Ertz, Kylan Granson at $2,600, and Bengals defense. That's $0 remaining in our salary.
Wait, who's in your double tight ending it here?
Yeah, $2,600.
How about this? What if we did this? What if we went Wentz, Taylor, Gibson?
Yeah.
Oh shit! Yeah. Well, if we're going, I was gonna try and get. Wait a second. Now I need to make an adjustment here because I don't want to.
We can go Chase instead of Adams.
I really like those Adams targets.
So do I like Adams as well.
All right, wait a second. Don't give up. Don't give up. Oh, here you go. All
right.
You want it? You got it, Johnny. Here it is.
Give it to me.
Wentz, Taylor, Gibson, Davante Adams, Jerry Jeudy, Curtis Samuel. Throw your dart at OJ Howard. Slide your boy Kendrick Bourne into the flex.
Yeah.
Bengals defense gives you $100 left over, and potentially you're winning GPP lineup.
Sure. I don't hate it. We'll go there. Where is he? Where's Kendrick Bourne?
You gave in too much. You could go, listen, Kendrick Bourne is at 4, right? Okay, fine.
No, I mean,
you could go,
I think
you could go Noah Brown.
Nah.
You could go Paris Campbell, but that gives you 2 Colts.
Well, so that's what I was saying. If we don't go Taylor, right, we can play the chalk play with Barkley. That gives us a lot more money to play. That gives us a $6,700 flex if we wanted to keep Howard in there. And we can play really whoever we wanted, right? Armand St. Brown goes right back in there.
St. Brown does go right back in.
So we have Wentz, Gibson, Barkley, Samuel, Adams, Judy, Howard, St. Brown, Bengals D, $200 left over.
Dude, I like that.
Love it.
Fist bump on that one.
We'll fist bump the screen, yeah. There it is. So that's where we're going. We'll throw this in a lineup. We'll put it in the example lineups, right? The podcast lineup.
Podcast lineup.
Yeah, so this is what we got going. We got a Washington stack going against Detroit. We have Barkley as our other running back with Gibson. We have Curtis Samuel, Davante Adams, Jerry Jeudy, O.J. Howard, Amon-Ra St. Brown coming back to the Washington side, and the Bengals D. That is our lineup here for week 2. Full playbook will be out with Saturday. Dartboard will be out on Saturday. Example lineups will be out on Sunday. You can catch myself and Andrew Cooper on the live stream over in the Fantasy Alarm channel. Also, if you're not yet part of the All-Pro member package we have here at Fantasy Alarm, do it now. NFL code NFL50, fantasyalarm.com/all-pro. You can click the link at the bottom of the video to take advantage of the offer. It's going away soon, Howard. They say it's a limited time offer. We had it for week 1. We cashed. It's available for week 2 right now. It could be the last chance to take advantage of it. It's 50% off the first 6 months. You get access to all of the content, not just NFL DFS, college football, PGA, MMA, NBA, NHL starting up in October, MLB as it finishes out the season, NASCAR, you name it, we cover it. And for 50% off the first 6 months with code NFL50 there, it's like $20 a month. And more importantly, I think, you get access to our premium Discord where you can ask myself and Howard Bender and Andrew Cooper and Justin Vreeland and James Grande and Matt Sells and Pete Cole and Dan Servadidio, Dan Malin, you name them. We're in our Discord, all of us, answering your start-sit questions each week to get you guys ready to go for all your DFS and seasonal lineups. So no better time than now to take advantage of it because it's going away soon. It's going to go away. 50% off the first 6 months, promo code NFL50.
I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to demand that they take it away for week 3. Get it while you can now, because if history shows anything, John, our biggest wins from the family have all come in week 3 of the season.
It's true. Millionaire Mike last year, week 3 millionaire on FanDuel.
Bob Boris won $500,000 on FanDuel in week 3 the year that he did it.
Yep. So get into it now. Week 2 may be the final week if Howard's pulling the plug. NFL 50% off the first 6 months. Again, click the link at the bottom of the video. Take advantage of it. fantasyalarm.com/all-pro for those listening on their podcast. Check us out, subscribe, like. We appreciate it, and we will catch you guys in week 3.